into Smith County, Texas. We've got quite a bit of information here. History, people, the economy, community stuff.
Yeah, the goal is really to boil it down, Find the most interesting bits and give you a good, clear picture of this corner of East Texas.
Sounds good. We want to connect those historical roots, see how they link up to what's happening now.
Exactly. Who lives there, what's driving the growth, and what makes it tick as a community.
Okay, so let's start way back. 1846, that's when Smith County officially gets started.
Right, named for General James Smith from the Republic of Texas days. But people were there before, of course, the Caddo.
Mm-hmm. And then the Civil War history really stands out, doesn't it? Camp Ford, especially.
It does, and Camp Ford was huge. I mean, the largest Confederate ordnance plant and prison camp in the whole state. That kind of history leaves a mark.
Definitely. And then the economy starts to shift. Agriculture, first cotton, and famously roses.
Ah, yes, the roses. Can't forget those. But then oil hits in the 1930s, and that changes things again.
And Tyler's been the county seat the whole time, since 1846. Named for President John Tyler.
Its location made it a natural railroad center, which really helped it grow.
What's really kind of wild is that the county lines drawn back then, they're still the same today.
That is interesting. You don't see that everywhere. Suggests a certain stability, maybe?
Could be. Okay, so fast forward to today. Who lives in Smith County now?
Well, the population's definitely growing. It's up to around 245,000 residents now.
And the median age?
Sort of late 30s, around 37, 38. Pretty typical.
What about the demographics? We heard it's getting more diverse.
Yeah, that's a clear trend. The white non-Hispanic population is still the largest group, but there are significant Black, African American, and Hispanic communities.
And the Hispanic population's growing noticeably.
Right. While the white non-Hispanic percentage has seen a slight decrease, it's, a changing picture.
Okay. And how are folks doing financially? Median household income?
It's hovering in the $70,000 to $77,000 range. Per capita is around $34,000, $35,000.
Which is maybe a little lower than state or national numbers?
A bit, yeah. But the cost of living helps offset that. It's about 3% lower than the U.S. average, which, makes a difference in your wallet.
True. Education levels look pretty solid, too. High school graduation rates are high?
Yeah, around 88%. And a good chunk, maybe 28, 30%, have a bachelor's degree or higher.
And you also see foreign-born residents, veterans, a mix of people. Household size is a bit bigger than average, too.
And home ownership rates are pretty high. Suggests people are putting down roots.
Okay, so let's talk jobs. What are the main economic drivers?
Healthcare is huge. Retail, trade, and educational services are right up there, too. Accommodation and food services are also important.
Unemployment rate seems decent, around 4%.
Yeah, pretty stable. The average wage might be lower than the national figure, but again, that cost of living adjustment is key.
And they seem to be looking ahead, right?
Yeah.
Using those ARPA funds.
Definitely. That's quite interesting. They're putting money into economic development, like a whole new business park.
Trying to attract manufacturing and distribution, I saw.
Exactly. Proactive steps. And the county's GDP is pretty substantial, almost $15 billion back in 2022.
Wow. Healthcare, oil and gas, manufacturing, real estate, they all contribute significantly.
And lots of people are in the workforce, high labor force participation. Seems like a dynamic economy, despite some wages being lower.
So beyond the economy, what about the community feel? The landmarks?
Oh, you have to start with the roses. The Tyler Rose Garden, it's the biggest in the U.S., apparently. And the Texas Rose Festival.
Iconic. What else?
Well, there's the Caldwell Zoo, Tyler State Park for getting outdoors. The Historic District in Tyler is nice, too.
Museums, science centers.
Yep. Discovery Science Place, Tyler Art Museum, the Goodman LeGrand House and Museum. Lots of history preserved there. The McClendon House, too.
And the local government, the Commissioner's Court, seems pretty active.
They really do. Establishing a historical commission, using those ARPA funds, not just for business, but also like a mental health facility.
Infrastructure, too. Road bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Handling practical stuff like illegal dumping, disaster response.
And engaging the community voter registration, community hero awards. Seems like they're involved on multiple fronts.
Of course, it's not all positive news. You see mentions of challenges, too, like crime or weather issues, real life.
Right, like any community. It's a mix.
So, wrapping it up, Smith County really feels like a plan, doesn't it? Deep historical roots, meeting modern growth.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Tradition and progress kind of working together, or at least existing side by side. The development efforts show they're definitely looking forward.
Okay, so here's something to think about as we finish. Given these big investments, like that business park and the changing population, what do you think are the biggest opportunities and maybe the trickiest challenges for Smith County as it keeps growing and diversifying over the next few years.
That's the key question, isn't it? How to manage that growth sustainably.
Something for you to ponder.
We're chasing some really intriguing whispers from local history.
Yeah, specifically looking at the Saussure family, or Socia. You see both spellings.
Right. And the question is, could they have ties to, well, two things, Freemasonry and this rather mysterious term, the Texas Mafia.
Sounds interesting.
We've got some research notes and an analysis someone put together trying to connect dots using available records.
Oh?
So our mission for you listening in is to really explore what these sources tell us and maybe where your own research could, lead.
Okay, so the Saussure Socia family, they definitely have deep roots there in Smith County.
How deep are we talking?
Well, the lineage apparently traces back to 17th century France. And like you said, the name varies a bit.
Any key figures mentioned?
Yeah, the notes highlight Samuel Aaron Socia Sr., probably born around 1895. So, yeah, a family with some real local history.
Got it. And then there's the Freemasonry angle. Smith County, a lot of Texas has a pretty significant Masonic history, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Since 1838 in Texas. The Grand Lodge of Texas today has, over 110,000 members? Something like that.
Wow. Across almost 900 lodges.
Exactly. And locally in Smith County, you've got quite a few historical lodges.
Wait.
Let's see. Lyndale Lodge, hashtag 410 back in the 1870s. And then Lyndale Lodge, hashtag 848, which is actually still active.
Okay.
Plus Jamestown Lodge, hashtag 56. Star Lodge number 118. That one goes back to 1853.
Right.
Hickory Grove Lodge, hashtag 184. St. John's AF&AM Lodge, hashtag 53. That one was started way back in 1849, though the building's from 1902.
So a lot of Masonic activity over the years.
Definitely. But here's the twist.
Yeah.
When you look at the public stuff, lodge websites, the Grand Lodge site, historical pages.
Yeah.
There's just no direct documented link between the Saussure or Socia name and any of these lodges. Not publicly, anyway.
But that doesn't automatically mean there was no connection, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a crucial point. Masonic membership, historically, hasn't always been, public knowledge. Can be quite private.
Okay.
And think about old records. They might just be sitting in physical archives, not digitized.
So not easily searchable online?
Right. Even places like the George Washington Masonic National Memorial's digital archives, they tend to focus more on governance, charters, that sort of thing. Not necessarily complete member lists from way back when.
I see. Okay, so what about this Texas Mafia term? It sounds, loaded.
It does sound dramatic, but based on the analysis we have, it doesn't seem to correspond to any known formal organization.
Not like, say, the Texas Mexican Mafia or the Texas Syndicate. Those are real documented groups.
Correct. Those exist, but Texas Mafia just doesn't pop up in public records that way. There's no official entity with that name.
So, what could it be then?
Well, the most likely explanation, based on the research, is that it might be a family-specific term. Yeah.
Like an inside joke or nickname?
Sort of. Or maybe a metaphor for, strong family loyalty, their heritage, something passed down within the family itself. A bit of internal folklore, perhaps.
Interesting. So not necessarily anything sinister, just family talk.
That seems to be the most plausible interpretation from the available info.
Okay, so if the public records are drawing a blank on both fronts, where does that leave someone, maybe you listening, if you wanted to dig deeper?
This is where you really have to pivot to private and local sources. That's probably the most promising path.
What kind of private sources?
Think about family archives. Old letters, diaries, maybe photographs. Sometimes you might spot Masonic symbols or regalia in a photo, for instance.
Ah, good point. Obituaries, too.
Obituaries can definitely mention affiliation sometimes. They're worth checking.
And beyond the family's own stuff?
Local historical societies. They are absolute treasure troves.
Like the Smith County Historical Society.
Exactly. Their archives mention things like Old Tyler City directories, East Texas family records, specific collections like the R.L. Faulkner collection. Their website probably lists holdings, but you often need to actually go there, maybe schedule research time.
Makes sense. Any others?
The East Texas Genealogical Society is another good resource. They cover Smith County.
What do they offer?
They have programs, like one called First Families of East Texas, which could potentially surface connections. Their website would have info on meetings, research groups, that sort of thing.
Right. So to kind of wrap up what we found in this deep dive,
okay,
the current public evidence, it doesn't show a direct link between the Saussure social family and Freemasonry in Smith County.
Correct. No public link found.
And the Texas Mafia term seems much more likely to be a family nickname or internal phrase than any kind of formal organization.
That's the assessment, yeah. But, and it's a big but,
The absence of public evidence isn't proof of absence, especially when dealing with private groups or old family history.
Precisely. Those connections could absolutely exist within private family records or tucked away in local archives. It's just not out there in the open right now.
It really highlights how much history isn't necessarily in the big databases or official accounts, doesn't it?
It really does. So much lives within families and local communities and records that haven't seen the light of day for years.
Which leads to a thought for you, our listener. What hidden stories might be waiting in your own family's past? What might be sitting in your local historical society or even just in a box of old photos? Maybe the most interesting history isn't always the stuff that's easy to find online.
Something to think about.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.